This is the O-Review podcast. O-Review.
Hello, welcome to another episode. Today I'm going to go over a series of glasses that have a theme. The theme is broken down into two parts. The first is frame material, and the second is general colorway. So the frame I'm going to be looking at today is one that's made out of O-luminum, or Oakley's aluminum frames. The very first one that they produced was the hatchet, and this was back in 2004. And at this point they hadn't had an X metal in a while, so this is the first metal frame they've released since 2001 with the penny. And you see some similar stylings with the penny. It does have the spring hinge, which was basically to counter the lack of flex coupler. So even though the penny did have a flex coupler, it also had spring hinges, so it had both. But this one just went away from that because there were a lot of issues with the flex coupler. And those really weren't solved until the X squared came out, only a few years ago. Now the mag switch did have flex couplers, and that was another metal model which used magnesium. But basically, since that had some issues, they really just went away with that. So aluminum is very nice because it is light. It's not going to be as durable as titanium with the X metal line, but I really like the way it feels. I like how light it is, and I do tend to prefer these over the X metals, which is really just sort of a personal choice. And as you see, since I've tried to collect each model, it's really just something that I've taken a liking to. So in 2004, they came up with a hatchet, really kind of cool stylings. You see a lot of the influence of the plate with a lot of the sharp lines and broken up frames here. So around that time, that's kind of one of the styles that they went with. Now nothing happened with the aluminum line for a while, until the razor wire came out. And this was around the time when Bluetooth headsets were big and Oakley was trying to get into those as well. But if you didn't want a Bluetooth headset, a few years later, or a year later, they came up with the razor wire NBT, which stood for no Bluetooth. And this allowed you to get the model without the Bluetooth headset for a little bit cheaper. And if you did want to buy the Bluetooth set alone, they did that as well. And it would fit this model as well as fitting the new square wire, which came out around the same time. It kind of fits on the Romeo 2, but it wasn't really designed for it. And Oakley had planned on creating a few other models that would allow the Bluetooth adapter to be on it, which is why the Bluetooth adapter's original working name was actually called the clamp. But that didn't end up happening, so basically we just had the Bluetooth, the razor wire NBT, and then the new square wire as the only models that would work with each other. So this model's kind of an anomaly because there's no branding on it at all. And you might be seeing this model over here. This is the Half-Wire XL, which as you see is very similar. It has a lot of the same stylings. I do notice that one is slightly bigger than the other. So if you kind of hold a profile, they're not exactly the same. And I was actually hoping maybe I could put the ice lenses into this Mercury frame, but it's not going to work. Yeah, there are a lot of styling, very slight differences in these. The nose bombs are obviously in a different configuration, but as far as the similar colorways go, I kind of have this just here to complete the silver with the ice finish on it. So this is not aluminum, this is just standard C5, but I brought it there just for comparison. But the O-luminum razor wire NBTs, this is the Mercury with light gray lens. And this is the, I think it's platinum with one of the, basically it's the gold lens. So these were actually donated to me from a guy on Facebook. I had posted some of the glasses I was looking at, and he had a couple extra, so he just dropped them off. So that's major respect to him. Just to put these on so you can see how they look. Very flat frame, very small frame. So these are going to be obviously more for lifestyle. Most of these are all going to be for lifestyle anyways, which is kind of the purpose of them. But I do like them. They do have Oakley etching on the bottom of them, which is the only place where you're going to see any sort of logo designation on them. And let me just put that hatchet on so you can see how that looks too. Very comfortable. Obviously the lightness, the aluminum frame does help with the weight, so that makes it a lot easier. So far, both of these have spring hinges, so that's sort of a consistency between the two models. And again, because they don't have any flex couplers, you need that spring hinge to add some sort of flex into the frame. I believe these guys Yep, these have spring hinges as well. So the Half-Wire XL has the spring hinge as well, even though it's not really part of the whole series. So then a few more years go by. So we have 2004, then these guys came out a few years later. Now we're talking 2010 or so. And again, we have another aluminum model. This is the Jury. And Jury was the name of a watch at the time, and they seem to reuse names a lot, so this thing basically just took that name on. This was a Sunglass Hut exclusive for a while, and there were a few different models of it, a few different colorways. I ended up choosing the very raw with, I think it's called Distressed Silver with ice lenses. So again, I'm trying to keep ice with all of these. And they do have spring hinges like the rest because there's no flex coupler. These ones are a lot bigger though. And they're kind of modeling after like the Jupiter, the frog skin sort of style, because the frog skins had been re-released and then everything sort of became a frog skin model or a frog skin clone as opposed to a gas can clone, which a lot of other things had been at the time. And again, this is a very, very heavily lifestyle-inspired piece. So putting these on for size. I wore these a little bit, but the comfort level, I like the hatchets a lot more. I like the aggressive styling of the hatchets because of the era. 2004 obviously was one of the better years for Oakley. And by 2010, we had these very kind of Wayfarer-style glasses. But I got them for the collection because I found them at Sunglass Hut on sale. I bought them at the same time as I got my King's Camo straitjacket too, so I got a good deal on them. So I figured, they were on my radar, and I decided to just sort of pick them up. The nose bombs are glued in, and that seems to be a style lately, where instead of having nose bombs that you can take off like the hatchet, they're glued in, so there's really not a whole lot you can do here. And actually, I feel like these are actually plastic; they're not even unobtainium. Inside here, again, there's some more plastic inserts, so the hinge is all plastic, and then the ear sock is unobtainium, so at least that part is somewhat original. So now we move to the last model in the aluminum line. These are the Jupiter factory lights, and as you see, they are very heavily inspired on the Jupiter frame, which is kind of what the Jury was starting to go towards, but not fully. So the Jupiter factory light is slightly different than the rest of the aluminum line because the orbitals are the only part that's made out of aluminum. The rest of it is what looks like sort of an acetate frame or an O-matter base, but it has carbon fiber inlays or a carbon fiber laminate on the outside of it. So unlike the C6, which is all carbon fiber and then milled, this is just a very flat laminate on the outside of the frame. This turned into the Jupiter Carbon, which replaced the O-luminum with O-matter, and then for some reason a higher price tag, and I'm not really sure why that is. But these were, again, just a Sunglass Hut model, just like the Jury, so the only place to get these was Sunglass Hut for a while. They did show up in other retail outlets later, but initially they were Sunglass Hut only. So the nice thing about this is that, again, we have an ice model, so I picked them up. I only got these recently. I've been kind of waiting on all of these because the price for most of these was in the high 200s. And typically I sort of have a cutoff about like 200 for any pair of glasses, no matter what they are. So when retail's higher than that, I sort of just sit around and wait for it to go on clearance and whatnot. And these do always go on clearance. These things always end up in the bargain or the discount section at Sunglass Hut, so that's where I can typically pick them up. So I would highly recommend the hatchet more than anything else. The styling of the early 2000s is still a holdover in this before it moved into the more lifestyles section. Once the frog skins came out, or really once the gas cans came out, everything became a clone of the gas can, and then everything became a clone of the frog skin, and then the Jupiter, and then etc. So really at this point, the lifestyle pieces were things like the Splice. That was really a lifestyle piece. And even though it was a lifestyle piece, it still had those aggressive stylings, the accents, things like that. And it was just sort of a holdover of that time where everything kind of had those features. So again, I like them. This is it. This is the whole thing. Highly recommend it, and hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks.